Using sources. You have to give your sources credit for what they said. It's good to use sources in your writing, but you always have to let your reader know where those ideas came from. In this video, we're going to talk about that, why we use sources, signal phrases. We're going to talk about quotes. We're going to talk about paraphrase. And we're going to talk about how to cite all that stuff. All right, so first, why do we use sources? Well, we can't really know everything there is to know about a subject, and we need some help. So we go find source information to help us. Using sources strengthens our argument. It shows our readers that other people agree with us or people disagree with us. We integrate them because it shows our readers how our ideas and the source's ideas relate to each other. Are we agreeing or are we disagreeing? Or is the source kind of elaborating on what I'm saying? It makes it easier to read when we smoothly integrate sources into our writing. So we have to learn some ways to do that to make it smooth. We can't just jam them in there or it will not, it'll be hard to read if we do that. Why do we give credit? Because our readers want to know where we got our information from. They might want to go read more about it, read more about that person, or more things from that person uh, who we got our information from. When we give credit to our sources, it gives our writing great ethos. It shows that other important people um, back up our ideas. It also gives us ethos because it shows that we are fair by giving credit to people. It's just the right thing to do. We give credit to the author by using tags, also known as signal phrases, attributive tags, or author tags. We use signal phrases to avoid writing like this. So you see the first two lines are from the writer. The writer's writing that. On the third line, a quote gets introduced, and then the quote just ends in the fourth line. We don't ever see who said that. This is a problem. We can't just insert quotes like this and not tell our readers who said that or where that came from. Okay, we'll learn how to fix this in this video. Examples of signal phrases. They look like this. Schicke argues that. That is a signal phrase. Cop says that. That's another signal phrase. It's the author's name plus a verb. Here's another signal phrase example. In their studies of male behavior, Rodriguez and Kuhn point out that, and then here comes the quote. See? That was smooth. Signal phrases, other ones that you could use, according to, claim, argues, suggests. You could use a pronoun and say he illustrates, she informs, or they show. So always use these when you're using source information in your writing to back up your ideas or to show other ideas. And vary these up or your writing will become repetitive. So, you could go to the OWL at Purdue and type in signal phrases and give you a whole list of verbs you can use, different ways you can introduce your sources. Signal phrases help us introduce quotes. So what is a quote anyways? A quote is a word-for-word borrowing of your source's ideas. It gets quotation marks before and after it. There's an example of a direct quote. Took that right out of the text. That's what a direct quote looks like. We should use a direct quote when precise language is very important. Or when you need to represent the writer by exactly what they said. They might have sounded mad or humorous or something. And we have to, in order to get across to the reader, um, in order to represent the reader accurately, we have to quote. Or if your paper is specifically about the quoted language, like if you're talking about a poem or a novel or something. Um, don't change the quote without letting your reader know. So here's an example of a quote, a direct quote. And say we don't need some of this stuff in the middle because it's just too long. We want to get rid of it. If we want to do that, use ellipses, which is like dot, dot, dot. See, we made that quote shorter by taking out some information, just putting dot, dot, dot in the middle. So if you're going to change a direct quote, let your reader know. Don't use these dot, dot, dots at the beginning or the end of a quote. Readers can assume that words preceded and followed the quote. They don't need you to show them that. They already assume that. Ooh, unless you drop words from the end of a sentence like this. Want to add your own words into a quote? You can do it. Use brackets. See? Sometimes you need to change a quote up so that it makes perfect sense with, grammatically, like with your sentence. That's what they did there. Brackets are also used to indicate where you have made an alteration to a word's form, perhaps in order to improve the readability or correctness. So in this first example, they changed make to made just so that it would make sense. Read it now. In Rodriguez and Kuhn's study, humans made individual choices even if group pressure influenced the decision-making process. So they just changed the form of the verb made or make into made. They did the same thing here. They put is in there and it's, but they bracketed to make sure that the reader knows that the writer changed that for their own purpose. How long can my quotes be? In general, they should not be longer than one sentence for composition papers and research papers. That's just in general. That is not a hard and fast rule, but just in general, about one sentence. Be wary of long quotes because they look like a crutch used to fill up space and or signal that you are too timid to express an argument in your own words. In college, we want to know what you think and how you would say it and how you would use the information. We don't just want you to cut and paste quotes into a paper. But if you must use a quote that exceeds 4 lines of type, offset the quote from the surrounding text by placing it on a separate line. Move in the margins, remove the quotation marks, and you got a block quote. Don't use them too often. That's what a block quote looks like. This stuff here is the text from the writer, and here's the quote, and then back to the text from the writer. That's called a block quote. Sometimes you need to use a really long quote, but you really shouldn't need to use it too often. So quotes are fine, but you don't want to use them too much. Readers want to hear you speaking. So you can always put your sources' ideas into your own words. Your worn words. That should say your own words. Interesting. It's called a paraphrase though, when you put your sources' ideas into your own words. And if you can paraphrase it, you should do it. If you could take a quote and say it in your own words, then you should do it. Why? Well, because readers want to hear you speaking. It's easier for them to read, and it's probably more interesting than just seeing a bunch of quotes. So, paraphrasing. When you repeat information from a source in your paper, it's possible and often desirable to just paraphrase it. That means rewrite it in your own words. This makes the information from the source go into your paper without a seam. Real smooth. As smooth as it can get. So there's an example. Rodriguez and Kuhn compare lemmings whose stupidity makes them incapable of reasonable decisions to human beings who often feel the pressure of group thought but are capable of making decisions as intelligent individuals. And it sounds like the quote we were looking at earlier, but it's different. The words were changed up, the order was changed up, different vocabulary. It was said in the writer's own words. So we did not need quotation marks because it is not a direct quote. However, we still do need a signal phrase, Rodriguez and Kuhn compare. Yeah, that was smooth. Um, Here's another paraphrase. That's the same paraphrase, actually. I'm just comparing it to the quote. So that's the paraphrased version of that quote. All right. It's also possible to mix the paraphrase with a quote. Ooh, getting fancy now. Rodriguez and Clume disparaged lemmings as famous for their inability to make decisions apart from the group, in contrast to people who make individual choices. So this part right here is paraphrased, and so is this part, disparaged lemmings. So they combine two quotes together with some paraphrased information, and that just makes it sound really good. All right, so now let's move on to how to cite the sources we have integrated so smoothly. So see how smoothly we integrated these sources? Well, we cited it by saying Rodriguez and Kuhn disparage lemmings, but we also need to put this information here, the page number it came from. Let's talk about how to put that page number in there. So if you include an outside source, it's always necessary to cite it. Even if you rewrite it in your own words, you always have to tell your reader where the information came from. The information, the exception is common knowledge. You don't have to cite sources when you're writing about like boiling points or time zones. This is common knowledge. But if in doubt, cite your source. There's three parts of a citation in MLA: the signal phrase, which we've already gone over, the parenthetical citation, which we're about to go over, and the works cited page, which we'll also go over. The parenthetical citation comes after the cited material. Often at the end of the sentence, it includes at least a page number, except for no page sources, such as those found online. But let's start with sources that have page numbers and see what it looks like. So you'll see in both of these examples, the 242 comes at the end. However, yeah, okay, no, I see. In both of these, this is a paraphrase here, and this is a quote. And in both of these examples, the 242 comes at the end, and the author's name comes in the text, in the writer's words. Rodriguez and Kuhn compare, and in the second one, it's in Rodriguez and Kuhn's study. So this is an in-text citation where the source's name, Rodriguez and Kuhn, is in the sentence. Where else could we put Rodriguez and Kuhn? We could put it next to the 242 in the parentheses down there. See, just like that. That's another way to do it. And you'll see both of these fairly often as you read academic writing. So let's talk about in-text citations for websites. If you if you include the author's name in your text, just put the first few words of the website in the in-text citation. So if your website has an author's name, you should definitely use it. And if you want to cite that cite where it came from, you can just put the name of the website in your parentheses. If you don't include the author's name in your text, just put that in the parentheses. You don't have to put the name of the website. Oops. What if there is no author? This is going to happen often with your website research, although you should always try to use a web source with an author. But what if you can't find one? Just refer to the site by its full name. Space and Corporations, a disarming view website. And if you don't want to talk about the website's name in your text and you will want to put it in parentheses at the end, just put the first couple words of the name of the website. So we just put Space and Corporations here. And what's going to happen is your reader's going to be reading along. They're going to get to this, and then they're going to look at your works cited to learn more about that website. So this is what a works cited page looks like. It has the words works cited at the top, capitalized. And then in alphabetical order, it has the sources that were used. And each one has a hanging indent, meaning that the second and subsequent lines of each entry are indented, but the first line is all the way over to the margin. See? Like that. So remember, if it's in your paper, it needs to be in your works cited. And conversely, if it's in your works cited, it needs to be in your paper. Don't load up your works cited with, 8 sources and then like in your paper only use 2. That'll be confusing. I hope you learned something about sources and how to integrate them. I got a lot of this information from the University of Nebraska Writing Center website, which I found to be very helpful. And this is my works cited page for this PowerPoint. Thank you.